I think it's an open question. I mean, I was pressing, I was trying to do my job and coordinate agency review, but I was also simultaneously, interested in advancing my own ideas, and the primary one in that context was to try to get arts and culture out of the East Wing of the White House and moved over to the West Wing, so it became a part of mainstream public policy making. Issues weren't getting resolved as pillow talk between the First Lady and the President, oh darling, how about another $10 million for the NEA? It's like, okay, sure. I wanted to see some real connection between administration objectives and the capacity of all the cultural actors in government. I made some progress. I got some agreement. But as the administration has rolled out, it looks to me like the old model is certainly hitting the ground first in terms of the First Lady going to all the openings and these sort of surprise arts events at the White House and so on. So I think it's very much an open question as to whether we're going to see any real change there. I think the president himself, I don't know him, but my suspicion from reading his books and hearing what he says, I think he probably has great instincts around the value of cultural heritage, the value of creativity to a high quality of life. But I think right below him, you've got a lot of conventional wisdom about what the arts mean and don't mean. And I think if there's going to be any real change, he will have to, or somebody will have to get to him. He'll have to want things to be different. And I don't know what's going to happen there. So, and the other thing, of course, that I worked hard on was to try to get some money in the recovery bill that was being put together in the transition, get some money for the cultural agencies into that bill. And I originally tried to get $500 million for the NEA, the NEH, and the IMLS, and sent that memo up the line. And heard nothing back. None of us were getting replies, but people were getting things done. People were suggesting this research project or whatever in all these different departments that were being reviewed. And so finally I went to see John Podesta, and he told me in no uncertain terms he just didn't think it was a good idea to have the NEA. He specified the NEA in that bill because Republicans would use it as a wedge into attacking the entire stimulus effort. And he sort of said, well, you'll get more money later on, which I didn't believe. And then I went to see Peter Orszag, who is now White House budget director. And he's a guy in his early 40s, very nice guy. Made my whole pitch about the NEA and the NEH and IMLS, saying, look, these are established grant-making programs. They can move money quickly. They know how to do peer-reviewed, responsible distribution of money. These agencies can be good partners in economic stimulus. They reach all over the country, big cities, small cities. Nodding, and then I finally just said, Peter, I'm one of the few, maybe the only former Senate confirmed agency head in the transition. I'll really be humiliated if there's nothing for any of my agencies after this is over. And then I think out of that conversation, you get the $50 million. John Podesta, of course, is 100% correct. Republicans attack it. It's not in the, in the Senate version of the bill, and it takes some heavy lifting. Americans for the Arts, David Obey, the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, pushing and maintaining that $50 million, and it got done. But it was just symptomatic of how hard it's going to be to really change the way government and public policy interact with the arts. I mean, here's John Podesta, one of the smartest guys in government, taking a very dim view of how funding for the arts can play on Capitol Hill and being right about it. And here's the White House, after I'm memoing all over the transition, and still, as it comes out of the gate, you still, as far as I can tell right now, it's arts and culture is still very much the province of the East Wing and the First Lady's office. So there's still some time before we know the final answer to this, because I do know that the government is still organizing itself. But it's very much an open question as to whether we're going to see anything qualitatively different than what's been there since the NEA was started in '65. A secretary of the Well, I'm ambivalent about it. My immediate question is, what would that person do? You know, they could walk in and make a few speeches, big, you know, prominent, talk about value, but at the end of the day, would the chairman of the two endowments report to this person? Would this person have authority over the government's role in the Smithsonian or over any work of the Library of Congress? Would he just be just kind of a coordinator? If it were a big, highly visible person, they would expect to be telling people what to do. Well, that would diminish the roles of the NEA and NEH and IMLS agency heads. So, to me, that's you know, that is one of the most significant problems. I mean, what I would argue for is to start small, take a kind of cultural portfolio and attach it to the responsibilities of a mid-level domestic policy council staffer. And their job would be to meet once a month with all of these agency heads and find out what they're doing, and to go into mainstream policy meetings in the administration and start a kind of conversation where if the president is going to go to South Carolina, you know, this person can say, well, gosh, you know, the NEA and NEH are running a big program in South Carolina. You know, we can put some kids on stage with you, or we can get you in a meeting in which you talk about the value of culture to community, and you know, in rural South Carolina, and begin to take arts and culture and integrate it with these mainstream policy objectives. And this notion of kind of a big bang, hey, let's snap our fingers and create a department or just put a czar there, I think would be really problematic. When I was NED chairman,